The U.S. Supreme Court has 3 women justices today, but women were not always welcome here. Today, we take for granted that women can do any job, but there first had to be women who could break into what had been a strictly male domain. These pioneers had to have a willingness to explore this unknown and often unfriendly world. One of the most important was Belva Ann Lockwood.
I mean, I know she was the first woman to be admitted, and she argued here at the court. She was widowed at a young age. She did a lot. I mean, she was a very activist woman. I guess, I don't want to say unafraid, but just very, sure of herself, or seemed to be, because she was able to do so much and was not discouraged when she didn't get, she first applied to be at the court and she was not allowed, and she didn't give up.
In the early 19th century, all women were perceived as good for was childbearing and taking care of house and home, their only job being to serve and support her husband. They were married off as early as 17 years old. It was a widespread belief that education for women beyond primary school was extraneous. Women rarely went to college and only to become teachers. Women couldn't vote, and work outside the home was viewed as only fit for men. Belva Ann Bennett was born October 30th, 1830, into the traditional world of rural Royalton, New York. She was good at school and became a teacher at just 14, but still lived with her parents and gave them the money she earned. She dreamed of going to a women's college, but her father disagreed. At 18, resigned to her parents' expectations, she married Uriah McNall, who ran a successful sawmill and farm. They had a baby girl named Laura. Belva managed to be content as her husband let her help run the business. In the early 18th century, a group of women began protesting for universal suffrage. These suffragettes, however, were hardly popular or successful, largely because they were expecting the men to change their minds without giving them reasons to. Belva Lockwood, rather than protest, entered the men's world, became an attorney, and demonstrated mastery of the very law that kept women from voting, creating a quiet irony for the men who would treat women as less than equal. She was a real leader who moved towards suffrage by actions rather than shouting. When Belva's husband died after 4 years of marriage, she was left a young widow of 22 with a 3-year-old daughter. She was forced to reconsider the path society had laid out for her. In trying to figure out how to support herself and her daughter, she realized the importance of making her own decisions. She used the small amount of money she collected from the teaching job she had just taken and defiantly chose to pursue a college education. A couple years later, with a college education from Genesee Seminary in hand and teaching experience at a small school in Lockport, New York, Belva looked at her next step. She developed a strong sense of justice fighting for equal pay for female teachers at the school, as well as successfully fighting for the right of her female students to study physical education and public speaking like the boys. Inspired by her fellow teacher, friend, and suffragette Susan B. Anthony, she decided to head to Washington, D.C. She felt D.C. was the center of government where all official change happened. It had been a man's domain for over a century and was a foreign place to a single mother from western New York. Belva was anxious to explore it as a woman, to encounter the masculine world, and to work to change it. She wanted to break down the cultural barriers that were raised against women. She also believed that the institution of marriage, used to formally keep women in virtual bondage to their husbands, should be adjoining equals. So, when she got to Washington, D.C., and met Ezekiel Lockwood, a clergyman, she was thrilled to find a man who viewed her as an equal. Belva remarried and had a second daughter named Jessie. Belva now had a new dream. She was certain that to change things, rather than pursue suffrage, the best way to change the world of men was to be part of the mechanism that drove politics, business, and change. Belva would become a lawyer. With her husband's open encouragement and financial support, Belva applied to Columbia Law School in Washington, D.C. in 1869. She was initially denied admittance because, quote, she would be likely to distract the attention of young men. Despite raising a new baby, she still managed to find time to lobby Congress and draft a bill for equal pay for female government employees. The bill was passed into law. Belva applied her success in lobbying to reapply to law school, this time to National University. To her surprise, she was accepted. Sadly, her success in gaining a beachhead into the man's world was overshadowed by the death of her baby daughter, Jessie. She plunged into her law studies, but faced much discrimination. She was forced to study separately, despite the school being previously promised as co-ed. When she finished her academics, the school said she could not graduate because, quote, she had not studied long enough, despite succeeding in the same classes as her male counterparts. She took 2 extra oral examinations and eventually wrote to the honorary president of the university and president of the United States, Ulysses S. Grant. While he did not write back or respond directly, she subsequently received her diploma 2 weeks later. After law school graduation, Belva started in private practice and ran a successful firm from her house and office at 619 F Street Northwest, in the heart of Washington, D.C. She won a variety of cases from murder to divorce. She saw fellow male lawyers on F Street use bicycles to efficiently get around town into the courts, so she became the first woman in Washington, D.C. to ride one. She never shied away from joining the world of men.
You got to try to be one of the guys in a good way, and it's not so much being one of the guys, it's just being one of the group. You know, everyone should be able to interact, and you shouldn't, hold yourself out, and don't always hold yourself out that I'm a woman doing this. You're a person doing it.
Though often ridiculed, Belva did not concern herself with whether she was ladylike as long as she got the job done. In a poem she wrote, "A simple home woman who only had thought to lighten the labors her business had wrought, and make a machine serve the purpose of feet, and at the same time keep her dust from the street."
And I think that's the point too. Women are not better and they're not worse. Just, like men are not better. I mean, everybody's a person. I may be better than some people, but there are other people that are better than me. It doesn't matter whether they're man or woman. There are just people who are brighter than me, and there are people who are not. And it's always going to pretty much be that way.
In exploring the world of men, Belva Lockwood wanted to engage them as equals. To be fully equal in the profession of law, Belva wanted to be eligible to practice in the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court. Lockwood once again went to Congress, but a bill allowing women to practice in the Supreme Court did not pass. She then went to the Supreme Court itself, but trying to maintain their all-boys club, the justices refused to acknowledge her standing and sent her back to the halls of Congress. She used her experience as a lobbyist to wage a 5-year battle against the Supreme Court. Sponsored by Albert Gallatin Riddle, Belva Lockwood finally declared victory on March 3, 1879, and she became the first female lawyer admitted to the Supreme Court. She also became the first woman to argue a case in the Supreme Court, eventually winning multiple cases, including one involving property rights for Native American Cherokees involved in the Trail of Tears. She opened the door to women practicing in any federal court, establishing women in a place where they had once been barred. If it weren't for pioneering explorers like Belva Lockwood, women could have been picketing for 50 more years for the right to vote. Instead of merely protesting, as did the suffragettes, Belva actually entered the man's world and staked both the physical and ideological claim that anything men could do, women could do as well. She left no doubt that women were up to the task. Living proof is in 4 female Supreme Court justices, and women entering law in equal or greater numbers than men.
I think, obviously now women are in most fields and are very well regarded in a lot of fields. I mean, we've got women justices, we've had a woman solicitor general, a women attorney general, we've got women running for president who actually have a shot at it. So I think we have come a long way.
Just as explorers once colonized North America, Belva Lockwood became a pioneer for the women who learned to explore and occupy the world of men. Belva's unparalleled desire for justice, fairness, and equality was based on an omnipresent moral code that appeared to dictate everything she did, even if it sometimes slowed her progress. She chose the American legal system as her world to explore, engage, and ultimately leave permanently changed.